Hello, everyone. I am Antoinette Cattura, Library Archives Manager at LAU Libraries, moderator of this session. I would like to welcome you all to the first session of the Lebanese Library Association's sixth conference. This session will delve into the topic of digitization for cultural heritage protection. Our first speaker is Dr. Arif Shawoon. Dr. Shawoon is the head of digital curation, preservation, and access at Qatar National Library, where he leads all activities related to the long-term digital curation and preservation of the library's digital collections. He has also held key positions at the University of New South Wales Library in Australia and at the Science and Technology Facilities Council in UK, where he played leading roles in software development and research projects in digital preservation and curation, as well as in research data management. Dr. Shawoon, the floor is yours. Thank you. Yeah, over there. No.
How about now? Whoa, okay, it's too loud. Sorry about that. Is it too loud? Okay, it works. Just quickly. Yeah, it works. Okay, well, thank you, Antoinette, for the kind introduction. Although I had written that, so it's not, but thank you anyway. First of all, so my name is Arif Shawoon. I work for Qatar National Library. I oversee the digital curation, preservation, and accessibility of various collections at the library. But before I get into the talk, I'd just like to take a second to offer my sincere gratitude to the conference organizing committee for the opportunity for me to be here today. I mean, it's a rather important event, but also it's my first time in Lebanon, attending one of these conferences. Really excited and thrilled. Looking forward to, what promises to be a rather invigorating set of talks and presentations on that over the next 3 days or so. Okay, so I'd like to talk to you about, I'd like to talk to you about the Qatar National Library's digital repatriation program, particularly focusing on the underlying model and the scholarly impact of the repatriated collections. I'd also like to touch on the long-term digital preservation of cultural heritage content, including the current landscape for digital preservation within the region, and also the Qatar National Library's role as a custodian of such content, not just for Qatar, but also for the region. So here's some of the things I'd like to cover in the next 15 minutes, I guess. I'll try to keep to the time. So I'd like to sort of begin with a bit of a history of the library, followed my mission and vision, just to kind of set the context of rest of the talk. Then we'll get into the rest of the talk, and then I'll leave you with some concluding remarks, hopefully, which will lead to some interesting conversation discussions. If time permits, let's see how it goes. Okay, so a quick history of the library. This is specifically for those who are not aware of, the library or how it's actually come to be. So we officially opened our doors to the public back in April 2018, following an Emir decree by the Emir of Qatar, His Highness Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, which effectively marked the library as one of the youngest national libraries in the world, at least at the time. I'm not sure if there's been any new national libraries in the last 5 years. But the primary or the wider objective or the goal of the library has always been to support the country on its transition from its heavy reliance on hydrocarbon-based economy to a more sustainable knowledge-based economy. And that's pretty much reflected and embedded in every aspect of the library, including the library design, which is designed by a world-renowned architect, Rem Koolhaas. So it's a really good place to visit. So if you're ever in the country, I strongly encourage you to visit the library, to give us the opportunity to host you. You won't regret it. Now, the mission and the vision of the library, which was conceived very early on in the library's development phase and has been refined and adapted or updated over the years, but the primary focus remains the same, which is to establish the library as a center or knowledge hub, if you will, for all different types of research and learning and scholarly activities by spreading knowledge, nurturing and cultivating imagination and creativity while capturing, curating, preserving, and safeguarding the vast wealth of cultural heritage content, as well as documented heritage content that exists, not just within Qatar, but also in the region. And the library aims to do so by developing, maintaining, and providing access to a wide array of user-friendly, intuitive, and technologically advanced programs and services. And the digital repatriation program that I'm going to talk to you about today is one such activity that contributes quite significantly to the library's mission and vision. So let's talk about the regional repatriation program of Qatar National Library. Now, just before I get started, just to make sure that we're on the same page, oh, sorry about that. Just to make sure that we're on the same page, the digital repatriation refers to the process of returning digital cultural heritage content of one country or community that's currently located somewhere outside that country or community back to that community or country. And of course, the actual process may vary. It may involve digitization, curation, preservation, all the rest of it. But in a nutshell, it's about returning the content to its rightful owner. And Qatar has tangible heritage content scattered, across numerous countries and continents. And this is mainly due to its rather, complex colonial past that I think was briefly touched in Basma's presentation earlier. And this is not too dissimilar to some of the other countries in the region and also in the Indian subcontinent. So I don't think I don't have the time to get into all the details here. But the point is that Qatar has a substantial amount of cultural heritage content dispersed across the globe in various archives and libraries and museums and so on. And then through this repatriation program, the library aims to bring as much of this possible, back to its country, and thereby empowering its residents and citizens to not only sort of, embrace its history, but also take ownership of that. And this program began as early as 2014, which is almost a decade from now, with a partnership with the British Library, which sort of really set the foundation for all the other sort of partnerships that we've had up until now. So through this repatriation program, the library has collected a growing volumes of digital cultural heritage content, and these are divided into many collections. And the chief amongst them is the British Library collection that I've just mentioned, which is, as you can imagine, is a product of a decade-long collaboration between the library, British Library, and also the umbrella organization for Qatar National Library, which is Qatar Foundation. And through this partnership, the library has managed to acquire more than 2 million digitized pages, including reports, letters, manuscripts, featuring many languages and so on. So it's truly become one of the most extensive collections of the library, and it's definitely one of the most widely used. Now, the partnership with the British Library wasn't just a coincidence. It just didn't happen. It was a strategic one. It was a deliberate and conscious decision to partner up with the British Library, mainly because of the British Library's possession of the world's leading historical compilation of various cultural heritage items related to Qatar and the region within their India office archives and their private papers collection. And through this program, Qatar has been gradually bringing them back to Qatar. And most of this content has been disseminated through Qatar Digital Library, which is an open access portal, also developed as part of this partnership, which looks a bit like this. And it's open access. The link is there. Please feel free to visit. But it's definitely one of our most widely used portals, which I'll talk about in a minute. I don't think I have time to go into all the other collections we have, but one collection that I'd like to mention, which is more of a recent one, that it's a collection of more than 9,000 historical aerial photographs of Qatar, captured by more than 50 flights by UK and US military between 1944 and 1983. And just to sort of show you how interesting it looks, so we've tried to kind of superimpose the coordinates of these images on the map of Qatar. And you can see it's a rather comprehensive coverage of not just the country, but also the region. And imagine the possibilities of research and learning through these the data sets that come with these images. Now let's briefly talk about the impact of these collections that has had up until now. Unfortunately, except for the British Library collection, or the other collections haven't been as widely disseminated as we would have liked. It's mainly because our digital repository is still kind of under development. We had one, but it was on a data technology. So we're currently in the process of doing some rather major renovation of the digital repository. And these other collections are meant to be sort of, intended to be disseminated to this collection, through this platform, which we hope will happen in the next couple of years. But up until now, the British Library collection has been disseminated widely through the Qatar Digital Library portal. And as you can see, we've had a rather considerable uptake of the content. There have been many publications citing the British Library collections from QDL. We've had a steady growth in terms of number of users visits and so on. Also, there have been more than 1,000 newspaper articles published about the QDL and the impact it has had on the wider research and learning related to the Arabic Gulf history or the history of the wider MENA region. Sorry, if I can go to the next one. Okay, there it is. So let's talk quickly about the underlying repatriation model, which is what sort of makes all of this thing happen. And once again, I'm not sure if it's visible. Okay, it's visible there. It's rather blurry on this screen. So I don't think I have time to go into all the sort of nitty-gritty about this model, but I just like you to focus on the partnership aspect of this model, which is the key. And this is where the library works with a partner institution holding potentially important cultural heritage content or related to Qatar, to decide on what type of content to get, bring back to the country, the quality aspects of that, long-term digital preservation aspects, and all the rest of it. And once that's been decided, the content comes into, is transferred to the library, and it goes through a series of automated, semi-automated, manual curation processes before the content is ready for digital preservation and dissemination through one of these portals. Well, it's mostly Qatar Digital Library for now. But underpinning these processes are a set of policies and procedures that the library has developed over the years. Now, this is what the model looks like now. But if you looked at this model back in 2014, it looked rather different, with a lot less attention paid to the quality assurance aspects, as well as the long-term digital preservation aspect. In fact, long-term digital preservation at that time was understood to be just digitization. And this was briefly touched on some of the previous conversations as well, that it was understood that, okay, we're digitizing stuff, so that's okay. That's enough to keep it for the next 10 to 100 years. And that misconception about preservation, digitization continues to exist till now, even in the wider region, at least in the MENA region. And this is something I'd like to touch on in the next couple of slides. But this was expected for a library building its capacity. But what was more important was the library to identify these gaps and address them. And that's what the library has done over the years. And that's essentially resulted into this more refined model that we're looking at today. So let's briefly talk about the digital preservation of the content that the library has repatriated up until now. So the library conducted an internal assessment back in 2019 in consultation with an external expertise, an expert rather, which indicated the library needed to do more than just traditional backup and archives. And at that time, library had already moved to a cloud-based infrastructure for the backup and sort of archival of the digital repatriated content that the library has heavily invested in. But the internal assessment indicated that what the library needed was a more comprehensive digital solution to truly safeguard the long-term accessibility and the overall longevity of the content, that the digital cultural heritage content that the library has invested quite heavily. So as a result, in 2020, the library implemented a digital preservation solution based on an open source product called Archive-Metica on top of its cloud-based architecture. And that's proven to be reasonably successful up until now. Now, I don't know, I don't think I have too much time, so I'm just going to quickly just reiterate the notion of digital preservation that was already mentioned in Basma's talk earlier, that digital preservation is not just digitization. It's a series of activities, including policies, standards, processes, undertaken and managed over the long term to ensure the digital content that you have today remains not only discoverable, but accessible and, more importantly, usable, both on today's and futures computer technologies, including software and hardware. So the wider goal is to ensure that our future generations of patrons and users and academics and researchers can use the content that we are trying to preserve or collect today, use it for their benefits as they were originally intended. So that's what it is in a nutshell. And just to reiterate, digitization is not the digital preservation solution. It's a very important early step in a rather intricately orchestrated series of processes that make the digital preservation happen, but it's not the solution. Okay, I think we're nearly there. So in conclusion, I'd like to convey, I think I've tried to convey that the Qatar National Library has made reasonable progress through its digital repatriation program in bringing back digital culture heritage content from various archives and sort of collections outside Qatar, and thereby sort of we've been trying to empower the residents and the citizens of the country to take truly take ownership of their own sort of history. Qatar Digital Library and the British Library collection have made considerable contribution to this progress or success story, if you will. The library has also identified and addressed the need for digital preservation for its repatriated content, but it also underlined a prevalent issue of limited awareness or understanding of the importance and importance of or rather the fundamentals of digital preservation, and that gap needs to be addressed within the region. And the library, in its role as a custodian of cultural heritage content related to both Qatar and the region, aims to or in a position to collaborate with other leading institutions within the region to establish best practices for long-term digital preservation. And that is the only way to ensure that the long-term accessibility and longevity of the vast wealth of cultural heritage content that exists in this part of the world is truly safeguarded effectively and efficiently over the long term. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Dr. Shawan. Questions will be taken at the end of the session after the conclusion of the three presentations. Thank you. المحاضرة الثانية بعنوان توثيق ونشر التراث الثقافي والحفاظ عليه عبر البوابة العراقية للمعرفة يلقيها الأستاذ علي طالب كاظم العرداوي، مفهرس في مركز الفهرسة ونظم المعلومات في العتبة العباسية في العراق، حائز على شهادة بكالوريوس في الدراسات القرآنية، وله خبرة تفوق 10 سنوات في مجال الفهرسة والتصنيف. للأستاذ العرداوي خبرة طويلة في إعداد وتدريب برامج متخصصة في مجال فهرسة المخطوطات وكتب التراث العربي وفق قواعد ومعيار مارك 21. إضافة إلى ذلك فقد قام السيد العرداوي بإعداد ونشر دليلاً إرشادياً في فهرسة المخطوطات وفق صيغة مارك 21 وقواعد وصف وإتاحة المصادر RDA. تفضل سيد علي.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، وصلى الله تعالى على سيدنا محمد وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين وأصحابه المنتجبين. السيد رئيس الجلسة المحترم، السادة أعضاء اللجنة التحضيرية المحترمون، السادة الحضور مع حفظ الألقاب والمقامات، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. سنلقي على مسامعكم بحثنا الموسوم بتوثيق ونشر التراث الثقافي والحفاظ عليه عبر البوابة العراقية للمعرفة دراسة حالة مع زميلي الأستاذ حسنين نجم عبد. يمثل التراث المخطوط يمثل التراث الذخيرة العلمية في مختلف مجالات المعرفة البشرية، كونه يمثل حالة من حالات التواصل بين الماضي والحاضر والمستقبل، والتراث يمثل شكل من أشكال الهوية الوطنية وحضارة الإسلام والمسلمين وإخبار الشعوب بتاريخ والمسيرة العلمية التي خلفها لنا الأجداد. ومع ازدياد الحاجة لحفظ التراث ورقمنته، اتجهت بعض المكتبات ومراكز المعلومات إلى صناعة مشاريع رقمية للحفاظ على هذا التراث. وعلى أثر ذلك جاءت هذه الدراسة لبيان أثر مركز الفهرسة ونظم المعلومات في الحفاظ على التراث الثقافي العراقي، وينعكس ذلك في إنشاء مشروع البوابة العراقية للمعرفة التي تهتم بحفظ التراث الثقافي العراقي ورقمنته وتكشيفه على شبكة الإنترنت وبشكل مجاني. ويعد هذا المشروع الأول من نوعه كمشروع عراقي، ويتوافق مع قطاع لام الذي يجمع ما بين المكتبات والمتاحف وأرشفة الوثائق، حيث يتم عن طريقه أرشفة وتوثيق جميع المصادر التراث الثقافي العراقي وتحويلها إلى صيغة رقمية. وهذا المشروع أردف لنا رادفا جديدا وأزاح الحواجز التقليدية التي كانت تقف أمام المستفيدين، وتمكن الأشخاص من تبادل المعلومات المتمثلة بالمعرفة العراقية ومنع فقدان البيانات. إذن ما هي البوابة العراقية للمعرفة؟ البوابة العراقية للمعرفة هي منصة إلكترونية أطلقت في منتصف عام 2023 تحت بإشراف مركز الفهرسة ونظم المعلومات الذي يعد إحدى تشكيلات العتبة العباسية، والذي يفهرس ويهتم بفهرسة وتصنيف الوعاء الفكري الذي تمتلكه مكتبة العتبة العباسية وفق قواعد RDA ومارك 21. يتألف المركز من عدة أقسام كقسم التصوير وقسم الأرشفة وقسم الفهرسة الموضوعية وقسم الفهرسة الوصفية والموضوعية والضبط الاستنادي. نال هذا المشروع على تأييد دولي، وخاصة افتتح بإشراف الاتحاد الدولي لجمعيات المكتبات الأفلة. الأهداف والوظائف الأساسية لمشروع البوابة العراقية للمعرفة: تهدف التواصل والتشارك. تهدف البوابة إلى تعزيز التواصل والتشارك ما بين المجتمع العراقي الذي يحتوي على الإرث الحضاري العراقي، والمساهمة وتوسعة المحتوى البوابة العراقية للمعرفة. كذلك يهدف إلى توفير المعرفة والمصادر الموثوقة والشاملة. كما إنها تهدف البوابة إلى توفير الوصول الحر للمواد الفكرية، بحيث تمكن المجتمع الاستفادة من المواد المعلومات المتاحة فيها. كما إنها تعزز الوعي الثقافي باعتبارها تنشر لكل ما يخص التراث العراقي، سواء كان في الماضي والحاضر، وإن شاء الله تعززه للمستقبل. تتألف البوابة العراقية للمعرفة من 15 تبويبة، منها تبويبة الكتب وتبويبة البحوث والأطاريح والرسائل الجامعية والصور ومقالات المجلات والمواد المتحفية ومقالات الجرائد والمخطوطات والمرئيات والخرائط والمجلات والجرائد والطوابع والمسكوكات والوثائق. ولو لاحظتم أن هذه التبويبات التي تتألف من 15 تبويبة جمعت ما بين المكتبات وما بين المتاحف وما بين الأرشفة، وهذا يخضع لقطاع لام المطبق في العراق لأول مرة، وعلى كذلك أنه طبق في المكتبات الأوروبية، منها المكتبات الكندية والمكتبات الأمريكية. تمتاز البوابة العراقية للمعرفة بواجهة بحث سهلة لا تحتاج إلى تسجيل دخول عن طريق الجوجل أو مصادر أخرى. وباستطاعة المستفيد البحث بواسطة العنوان وبواسطة المؤلف وبواسطة الموضوع. فعلى سبيل المثال لو بحثنا عن العنوان، بحثنا عن بغداد مثلا، لو تشاهدون تظهر أمامكم تقريبا أكثر من 1500 نتيجة عن بغداد، موزعة ما بين مقالات الجرائد ومقالات المجلات وكذلك المخطوطات والبحوث والصور. وكذلك تظهر لنا أنه قائمة إحصائية بالمؤلفين الذين ألفوا عن بغداد، بالإضافة إلى البطاقات المفهرسة عن المصادر الفكرية التي ألفت عن بغداد. كذلك باستطاعة المستفيد البحث بواسطة المؤلف. على سبيل المثال لو بحثنا عن المتنبي، هنا لو تشاهدون أمامكم راح تظهر لنا النتائج عن المتنبي التي وزعت ما بين المصادر الفكرية، سواء كانت الكتب أو المقالات أو الأطاريح أو البحوث أو المخطوطات أو مقالات الجرائد، بالإضافة إلى قائمة مرفقة للمؤلفين. ولو لاحظتم تم البحث عن أبو الطيب المتنبي، لكن أظهرت لنا النتائج أبو الطيب المتنبي ابن جني وكذا. هنا تمتاز الفهرس داخل البوابة العراقية للمعرفة بخاصية الربط، باعتبار أنها فهرست البطاقات حسب قواعد RDA التي تمتاز بخاصية الربط. فعلى سبيل المثال لو كان أحد المؤلفين العمل الأصلي، على سبيل المثال أنه على شعر المتنبي أو ديوان المتنبي، هنا كذلك راح تظهر لنا النتائج اللي خاصة المرتبطة بالعائلة الشجرية للكتاب الأصلي. نعم. هنا نستطيع للمستفيد البحث بواسطة، مثل ما أخبرتكم أنه يستطيع المستفيد البحث بواسطة العنوان وبواسطة المؤلف. كذلك هنا يستطيع البحث بواسطة الموضوع. على سبيل المثال لو بحث عن العراق، هنا راح تظهر لنا النتائج مثل ما تشاهدون أمامكم بالشاشة، أنه المصادر اللي خاصة بالعراق والموزعة عن المصادر المكتبية. وهذه النتائج تتغير بتغير المصادر المدخلة إليها خلال أسبوع. وراح تظهر لنا كذلك المؤلفين اللي ألفوا عن العراق، وكذلك النتائج عن الموضوع والمصادر المفهرسة، سواء كانت اللغات المفهرسة داخل الفهرس، وكذلك دور النشر والناشرين. القواعد الخاصة بفهرسة داخل البوابة العراقية للمعرفة. المكتبات تعتمد على القواعد خاصة لفهرسة المحتوى الفكري الذي لديها. بعض المكتبات تعتمد على فهارس محلية، وبعضها تعتمد على القواعد محلية، وبعضها تعتمد على قواعد عالمية. بالنسبة إلى البوابة، فهارس البوابة العراقية للمعرفة، باعتبار أن مركز الفهرسة ونظم المعلومات هو المسؤول عن الفهارس والبوابة العراقية للمعرفة، يفهرس المحتوى الفكري للمخرجات التي تظهر على البوابة العراقية للمعرفة حسب قواعد RDA وحسب مارك 21. وهذه القواعد عالمية، باعتبار أنه كبرى المكتبات العالمية تفهرس وتستخدم هذه القواعد. على سبيل المثال مكتبة الكونغرس الأمريكي والمكتبة الكندية. وتمتاز هذه القواعد بخاصية الربط، باعتبار أن أغلب المصادر التراثية تخضع إلى باعتبار أنها عائلة شجرية، باعتبار عندنا مصدر أصلي ومعمول عليه بالنسبة سواء كان حواشي أو تعليقات. فهذه القواعد لها خاصية الربط ما بين هذه المصادر حتى تظهر للمستفيد كل المصادر المرتبطة وكل الكتب المرتبطة بهذا المصدر المبحوث عنه. فعلى سبيل المثال لو تشاهدون أن هذه البطاقة المفهرسة المرفقة في البوابة العراقية للمعرفة تظهر لنا واجهتين بالنسبة للمخرجات البطاقة المفهرسة داخل البوابة، بطاقة مفهرسة وفق مارك 21، وكذلك تظهر لنا بطاقة بعرض ببلوجرافي، وكذلك صورة مرفقة للوعاء المفهرس. بالنسبة للمصادر الفكرية بعضها يخضع إلى بعضها يخضع إلى الملكية بالنسبة لملكية المؤلف أو ملكية الناشر. هنا راعت إدارة البوابة على هذا الأمر، باعتبار أنه بعض المصادر أمثال المخطوطات وكذلك الرسائل الجامعية أرفقت مع هذه المصادر الفكرية التي تخضع إلى الملكية، استمارة لطلب العنوان حتى يمكن عرضه للمستفيد على الجوجل درايف ولمدة محدودة، حتى أنه الحفاظ على الملكية الفكرية. بعض المصادر الأخرى التي لا تخضع إلى الملكية الفكرية باستطاعة الباحث تحميلها بصورة مباشرة عن طريق موقع البوابة، أمثال المقالات والصور والطوابع وغيرها. ما يميز موقع البوابة العراقية للمعرفة إنها وضعت أيقونات خاصة للمساهمون مع البوابة العراقية للمعرفة، سواء كانوا مؤسسات أو أفراد، وهذا يخضع إلى الفهرسة المجتمعية الذي ينص على باستطاعة أي شخص لديه محتوى فكري أو تراثي أنه المساهمة والفهرسة داخل البوابة. كذلك ما يميز موقع البوابة العراقية للمعرفة إنها أرفقت المشاريع الأخرى التي يشرف عليها مركز الفهرسة ونظم المعلومات، وهو الملف الاستنادي للمؤلفين العراقيين. وهذا مهمته الملف إنه إعداد قائمة استناد للمؤلفين العراقيين، وكذلك دليل لمواقع الكتب اللي خاصة بالمؤلفين العراقيين في المكتبات. كما أنه يتميز بعرض خارطة جغرافية للمكتبات في العراق، سواء كانت هذه المكتبات مكتبات جامعية أو مكتبات شخصية أو مكتبات مدارس. كما أن هذه البوابة حققت أغلب أهداف التنمية المستدامة التي دعت لها الأمم المتحدة ودعت إلى تحقيقها في عام 2030. فقد حققت الهدف الرابع وهو التعليم الجيد، وكذلك حققت الهدف الخامس المساواة بين الجنسين، وحققت الهدف التاسع وهو الصناعة والابتكار والهياكل الأساسية، باعتبار أن البوابة العراقية للمعرفة مهمتها جمع التراث الماضي وكذلك الحاضر، ووضعت الأساس للمستقبل لنشر هذا التراث. وكذلك أنه حققت الهدف العاشر وهو الحد من أوجه المساواة، باعتبار أنه باستطاعة أي شخص مهما يكون انتمائه الدخول إلى البوابة العراقية للمعرفة والاستفادة من المصادر المعرفية والفكرية اللي متاحة لديهم. كذلك أنه حققت الهدف 11 وهو المدن والمجتمعات المحلية المستدامة، باعتبار أنه تحويل البوابة مهمتها تحويل التراث إلى رقمنة، باعتبار أنه المناطق النائية باستطاعتها الدخول على البوابة والاستفادة من المصادر الموجودة بدون جهد وبدون قطع المسافات للحصول على المصدر. كذلك أنه حققت الهدف السابع عشر وهو عقد الشراكات، باعتبار هذا يخضع إلى يحقق الفهرسة المجتمعية، باعتبار أنه أتاحت الفرصة للمؤسسات والأشخاص الذين لديهم التراث، سواء كان التراث مكتبي أو متحفي أو وثائق أرشيفي، أنه المشاركة مع البوابة العراقية للمعرفة للاستفادة منه عن طريق الباحثين.
سيد علي 3 دقائق عمر معنا.
شكرا لحسن استماعكم وإصغائكم.
نشكر السيد علي على مداخلته وننتقل إلى المحاضرة الثالثة والأخيرة من هذه الندوة. The last presentation in this session will be conducted online by Mr. Peter Herdrich. Hello, Mr. Peter. Peter Herdrich is the Chief Executive Officer at Cultural Capital Group and the co-founder of the Antiquities Coalition, where he directs strategic cultural heritage project. Over the last 3 years, he has worked with the Ministry of Culture and Arts in Algeria on digital infrastructure projects in library and museum, funded by the US State Department. He has also worked with religious minority communities in Iraq on the digitization of tangible and intangible cultural heritage, funded by the United States Agency for International Development. Mr. Herdrich led an emergency digitization and documentation project at the National Museum in Yemen in collaboration with the Egyptian Heritage Rescue Fund and supported by the Aleph Foundation. Please, let's welcome Mr. Herdrich.
Hi, good morning and good afternoon, everyone. I am not Peter Herdrich, but I am really pleased to be joining you here today to help our joint presentation from the Antiquities Coalition, including my colleagues Abir Chorfa and Peter Herdrich. So I will begin with a short introduction and then turn it over to them.
Please, if you can introduce yourself.
Absolutely.
Actually, I've been told that Mr. Herdrich will be presenting this session. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Helena Eros. I'm the Director of Programs from the Antiquities Coalition, who has collaborated with Peter on a number of these projects that we'll be speaking about today. I will introduce a little bit about our organization and then turn it over. I'd like to start by saying thank you to the LLA, the ESCWA, all of the organizers, participants, and speakers for including us in this important event. We've been really interested by the presentations thus far. The Antiquities Coalition is a nonprofit based in Washington, D.C., leading the international campaign against cultural racketeering, which is the illicit trade in ancient art and artifacts. We champion better law and policy, foster diplomatic cooperation, and advance proven solutions worldwide with public and private partners. We are all working towards a future where the past is preserved for the next generation, not looted, smuggled, and sold to finance crime and conflict. Our organization was founded in 2014 in the aftermath of the Arab Spring, when many antiquities were coming out of the region to the United States, which is the largest art market in the world. At that point, we saw that the US had a responsibility to fight back against this global problem. Of course, this is not a new problem. We always say, as long as there have been tombs, there have been tomb raiders. But this crime is now taking place at a scale never before seen, and financing, as I said, some of the century's worst actors and greatest villains. We work around 4 main priorities to combat this illegal trade: championing better law and policy, closing US markets to illicit antiquities, convening with purpose, and encouraging responsible markets and trade practices. We also run an award-winning think tank that helps governments, law enforcement agencies, the private sector, and other decision makers better understand the challenges facing our heritage while developing proven solutions to protect it. And we have several task forces that have developed over 80 concrete recommendations for governments, international organizations, and the private sector. Since our founding, we've felt that public policy has treated cultural racketeering as a white collar or a victimless crime. I think all of us here today know that that's not the case. And so through our work, our message has always been that this racketeering is not just a threat to our shared history, but also to the legitimate art market, to human rights, to national economies, and to global security. And as I said, this is a global problem. While we work on this issue from the United States with our organization, we know that there's great efforts taking place all around the world, many of which we've heard of about today so far. And in our work, we've seen the important role that digitization can play in protecting our heritage. And so today, our presentation is about one of these projects that we've worked on, and I will now turn it over to my colleague Abir Turfa to discuss it further. Thank you.
شكرا
Thank
حنان.
you.
مرحبا بالجميع، صباح الخير. أنا سعيدة جدا بمشاركتكم اليوم في هذا اللقاء الثري. لقد كان لي الشرف في العمل مع منظمة The Antiquities Coalition على مشروع تراثي، والذي يعد مبادرة هي الأولى من نوعها في الجزائر. انبثق مشروع تراثي عن مذكرة تفاهم تم إمضاؤها بين الجزائر والولايات المتحدة الأمريكية سنة 2019، وكان ثمرة 3 سنوات من العمل. سأقوم بمشاركة I need to share my screen.
We need to give you permission, or it's okay.
Can you see it now? Give me a second. Okay. Hi, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. Sorry. إذن خلال هذا العرض التقديمي اليوم سنقوم بالسفر عبر المرحلة التحضيرية والمرحلة التطويرية لمشروع تراثي، ثم التعرف على الخصائص هذه المنصة والدليل الفوتوغرافي. Sorry. I'm sorry, I have a technical. Yeah. إذن خلال المرحلة التحضيرية انقسمت إلى 3 خطوات أساسية. أولها كان مراجعة القانون الجزائري فيما يخص حماية التراث الثقافي والملكية الثقافية، جمع البيانات اللازمة حول الممتلكات الثقافية الأكثر عرضة للسرقة في الجزائر، وجمع الإحصائيات المتعلقة بذلك. هذه المرحلة تخللت العديد من جلسات العمل مع خبرائنا من الجزائر بما فيهم البروفيسور شرقي سامية والبروفيسور مصطفى ضربان. لما نتحدث عن الجزائر نتحدث على أكبر بلد في إفريقيا، نتحدث على بلد اللي فيه أكثر من 15,220 موقع تراثي مفتوح، أغلبها متمركز في الشق الشمالي والشرقي للبلاد، مع 7 مواقع عالمية مصنفة. أول شيء كان لازم نفهم ما هو التراث الثقافي بالمفهوم الجزائري، لأنه تعريف التراث الثقافي أو الملكية الثقافية يختلف من بلد إلى آخر، من قانون إلى آخر. إذن كان من المهم جدا فهم تعريف القانون الجزائري للتراث الثقافي، كيفية نقل الملكية الثقافية من أجل استهداف بشكل أكثر دقة لكل الممتلكات المعرضة للسرقة والاتجار الغير مشروع. أنا أعتذر عن الضوضاء. اليوم أنا أنقل لكم مباشرة من مالكوم International Conference. يعني خطفت 20 دقيقة من أجل القيام بهذه العرض التقديمي. إذا خلال جمع الإحصائيات اكتشفنا أنه في الفترة ما بين 2019 و 2022، يعني خلال 3 سنوات فقط، قامت قوات الأمن بمعالجة 195 قضية، في خلالها تم استرجاع أكثر من 27 ألف قطعة خلال محاولة تهريبها أو الاتجار بها الغير مشروع. في خلال كل هذه القضايا كان عدد المتورطين أكثر من 300 شخص ما بين جزائريين وأجنبيين. هذه الإحصائيات كانت مفيدة جدا لأنه من خلالها تعرفنا على أكثر الممتلكات الثقافية عرضة للسرقة في الجزائر، واللي كانت بشكل رئيسي العملات النقدية، وكذلك العناصر المعمارية كما ذكرت سابقا نظرا لكثرة المواقع الأثرية المفتوحة في الجزائر، ثم تليها اللوحات الفنية، الأسلحة القديمة، المنحوتات والمجوهرات إلى غير ذلك. بعد ما جمعنا كل هذه البيانات انتقلنا مباشرة إلى المرحلة التطويرية. المرحلة التطويرية ميزتها العديد من جلسات الأعمال مع الأطراف المعنية، ثم المعالجة النهائية للمعطيات من أجل تحديد قائمة النهائية للممتلكات الثقافية والتي ستكون ضمن قاعدة البيانات التراثي، وكذلك دراسة نماذج موجودة سابقا، نماذج دولية سنتطرق إليها. مثل ما راكم تشوفوا في الصور، هذه نبذة عن بعض جلسات العمل اللي قمنا بها سواء مع موظفي المتاحف وعمال المتاحف عبر الجزائر. كذلك نرى السيد بيتر هيرتريك هنا مع مع الهاي كوماندرز للقوات الأمنية في الجزائر، سواء من الدرك الوطني، من الشرطة، أو من الجمارك الجزائرية. وفي الأسفل نرى هنا ورشة تكوينية قانونية كانت بحضور العديد من ممثلي وزارة العدل في الجزائر من أجل دراسة القانون الجزائري فيما يخص حماية الملكية الثقافية، الممتلكات الثقافية. النماذج المتواجدة مسبقا هي the red list والID art. قمنا كذلك عقد جلسات عمل مع مختصين من كليهما ومن الانتربول من أجل مشاركتنا الانطباعات للمستخدمين الخاصة بكل من الريد ليست أو الاي دي ارت، معرفة ردود أفعالهم، معرفة تجاربهم مع هذه النماذج المتواجدة من أجل محاولة التحسين من تجربة المستخدم الجزائري. وفي النهاية حصلنا على الخصائص الوظيفية الأساسية لموقع تراثي أو منصة تفاعلية تراثي اللي لازم تكون مفعلة. أول شيء، تراثي هو موقع إلكتروني، هو منصة صحيح، لكنه بشكل أساسي قاعدة بيانات، بما معناه أنه تراثي يحتوي على كتالوج على كل الممتلكات الثقافية الأكثر عرضة للسرقة في الجزائر. أيضا من الخصائص الوظيفية الأساسية لموقع تراثي أنه مدعم باللغتين، باللغة العربية وباللغة الإنجليزية، يعني بإمكانكم الاطلاع عليه، بإمكانكم التنقل بين اللغتين بكل أريحية عبر كل الصفحات في موقع تراثي. شيء آخر كان مهم جدا إضافته للصفحة الرئيسية كان خاصية البحث السيرش بارد، مثل ما راح نشوفوه لاحقا، بكلمات مفتاحية، يعني عوض أنه المستخدم يتصفح الموقع الإلكتروني وفي قاعدة البيانات مثلا يأخذ قائمة أو إلى غير ذلك، هناك كلمات مفتاحية تخول له الوصول مباشرة إلى المعلومة في أقل من 3 نقرات. كذلك من أهم خصائص تراثي هو التوثيق البصري. التوثيق البصري كان من التحديات التي واجهت إنجاز التراثي، أولا لأنه كان خلال فترة الكوفيد 19 يعني قام بتقليل من تنقلاتنا بعض الشيء إلى المتاحف الجزائرية من أجل أخذ الصور، من أجل تحضير صور ذات 3D modeling، صور عالية الدقة، لكن الحمد لله تمكنا من إنجاز هذا الأمر. يعني انتقل الفريق المشروع إلى عدة ولايات في الجزائر وقاموا بتصوير هذه الممتلكات الثقافية التي تم تحديدها في القائمة التي تحدثت عنها سابقا، وهي متواجدة حاليا في المنصة الإلكترونية. كذلك أضاف الموقع الإلكتروني تراثي خاصية التفاعل والتبليغ، حيث قامت الوزارة بإدراج رقم هاتف وموقع وعنوان بريد إلكتروني من أجل التبليغ عن أي عمليات مشبوهة، من أجل يعني بعض إرسال تعليقات، اقتراح بعض التعديلات إلى غير ذلك. وملخص كل ما سبق، التراثي هو فعلا مصدر تعليمي يجمع سواء كان الفاعلين في مجال حماية التراث الثقافي من قوات أمن إلى غير ذلك، وخبراء وطلبة، وحتى يعني المغرومين بمجال حماية التراث الثقافي. ناخذ نظرة على الأوتكم تاع هذا المشروع هذاك. مثل ما نلاحظوا في عبر هذا السلايد، هذه الصفحة الرئيسية لموقع تراثي. في البداية تراثي ما بداش كقاعدة بيانات. في البداية كانت فكرة تراثي هو إنجاز دليل فوتوغرافي رقمي عبر الإنترنت. من بعد تطورت الفكرة أنه ما يكونش مجرد دليل فوتوغرافي عبر الإنترنت، بفضل العديد من جلسات العمل مع زملائنا في وزارة الثقافة والفنون، إلى يكون منصة تفاعلية اللي عندها الخصائص اللي ذكرتها الآن. من بعد ما قمنا بتطوير هذه المنصة التفاعلية، مرة أخرى توجهنا نحو طبع النسخة ورقية من هذا الدليل الفوتوغرافي. هذا الدليل الفوتوغرافي دوك نلاحظوه بالتفصيل من بعد إن شاء الله. نكملوا مع تراثي مثل ما ذكرت متواجد باللغتين العربية والإنجليزية. مثل ما تلاحظوا في الأسفل كاين هناك خاصية البحث عبر الكلمات المفتاحية. وبالنسبة ل the bar menu لمنصة تراثي، كان قاعدة البيانات، إمكانية البحث عبر الفئات مباشرة من خلال الصور تحت مسمى فئات. كذلك في صفحة خاصة بطلب الخبرة في حالة ما إذا كان مستخدم الموقع الإلكتروني لديه مجموعة خاصة، في حالة ما إذا كان يشتبه بعمليات إجرامية، أو من أجل التبرير عن اكتشاف موقع أثري جديد أو حفريات غير مشروعة، في مجموعة من أرقام الهواتف لتخول لهم بالاتصال بالمصالح المختصة. كذلك هناك صفحة القوانين والعقوبات. في هذه الصفحة قمنا بتحضير كل العقوبات التي يخولها القانون الجزائري أو القانون الدولي فيما يخص معاقبة الاتجار غير مشروع بالممتلكات الثقافية. هذه نبذة حول قاعدة البيانات. مثل ما تشوفوا هنايا قمنا بتقسيم الممتلكات الثقافية إلى عدة فئات. نعاود نرجعوا لهذه الفئات، كانت أكثر الفئات المستهدفة من خلال الإحصائيات اللي تحصلنا عليها من عند قوات الأمن، اللي هي الصناعة والفن الحجري في فترة ما قبل التاريخ، أدوات الحياة اليومية، المنحوتات والتماثيل، الأسلحة، فنون الشعائر الجنائزية. يعني هذه تاني لاحظنا العديد من السرقات، لأنه كان في ما نقولش عمليات دفن عشوائي، ما كان كثير من العائلات المالكة في الشرق الجزائري تقوم بالدفن في الأراضي الخاصة بها. من أجل ذلك كان العديد من هذه المدافن الجماعية في مناطق متفرقة وبعيدا عن بقية الآثار الرومانية والبيزنطية إلى غير ذلك. كذلك المخطوطات أيضا تعتبر جزء مهم من الإحصائيات اللي تحصلنا عليها، خاصة وأن أغلب المخطوطات في الجزائر مملوكة من قبل العائلات، فهي إرث عائلي وتعتبر كمجموعات خاصة. والعناصر المعمارية، هذه صورة عن صفحة الفئات، أين يمكننا البحث عن طريق الصور في موقع الإلكتروني التراثي. مثل ما تلاحظون كل هذه الصور هي صور عالية الدقة وتم التقاطها من قبل فريق مشروع تراثي. فيما يخص طلب الخبرة العلمية مثل ما ذكرت، إذا كنت تلاحظوا هنا في هذا الجدول هناك يعني حسب التخصص، يعني حتى تبع الممتلكات الثقافية، إذا كانت ممتلكات ثقافية تعود لعصر ما قبل التاريخ كان رقم هاتف محدد، وكاين حتى المتحف المتخصص في هذا الشيء. الحضارات القديمة والفنون الإسلامية نفس الشيء، بالنسبة للأعمال الفنية إلى غير ذلك. أريد فقط أني ننوه أنه العرض التقديمي هذا هو النسخة الأولية اللي سلمناها لوزارة الثقافة والفنون، وهي قيد التطوير حاليا من إلى غاية الحصول على النسخة النهائية في القريب العاجل إن شاء الله.
شكرا عبير.
العفو. الآن خصائص الدليل الفوتوغرافي.
Would you please wrap up your presentation? We're running out of time and we want to give Mr. Herdrich the chance to share his ideas.
I
Thank you.
completely understand.
Thank
Yeah.
Yeah.
So احنا ليش اتجهنا نحو الدليل الفوتوغرافي المطبوع؟ لأنه أداة ميدانية مادية محمولة وسهلة التوزيع، وفيها رمز الاستجابة السريعة QR، ومن عامل الأمن بإمكانه مسح رمز الاستجابة السريعة والتوجه مباشرة إلى قاعدة البيانات. هذه نسخة أصلاً على الدليل الفوتوغرافي. وهذا كان حفل إطلاق تراثي في الجزائر بحضور كل قوات الأمن، الصحافة والميديا. يعني حرصنا أنه يكون حدث كبير من أجل يعني تبليغ العامة بهذا الإنجاز. نذكر مرة أخرى أنه الأول في الجزائر. أنقل الآن كلمة إلى بيتر خاصة، وأنه عنده العديد من الأخبار السارة اللي حب يشاركها معنا اليوم.
شكرا. ميرسي عبير.
شكرا.
Hello, everybody. I'm Peter Herdrich. I'm the Executive Project Director on our digital projects, and I'm hoping you can see me. Okay, is my audio available and
Yes,
can you see me?
we
Yes.
can hear
Okay,
you.
good, good. Oh, okay. So thank you for joining us today. I wanted to say thank you very much for the invitation to the conference organizers. I think this is a very, very important conference. I think that the subject matter is just fascinating, and it's one in which we can learn a lot. It's also a chance for me to see a lot of people who I know for many years. We've been at this for about 10 years on digital infrastructure building projects, all the way back to the Digital Library of the Middle East with the Qatar National Library about 10 years ago. So it's a subject that we understand well, and I think it's a subject that is extremely important. So what I want to say then is this, thank you, but the Tarathi project that we're talking about today, it's aimed directly at anti-looting and illicit trafficking outcomes. It's part of several digital infrastructure approaches that we implement with our on-the-ground partners interested in combating looting. Now, I plan to talk a lot about that work and to go into some of the details on the work that we've accomplished in the last 10 years in Iraq, in Algeria, and in Yemen. But I'm going to skip that because we are running a little long, and I think it's important for us to have some conversation at the end of here. And I want to deliver a simpler message to everyone. We're losing cultural heritage aspects to conflict, to illicit trafficking, to fire, and to climate change. This happens every day, and you can see it around the world. There are reports of museum collections threatened in Sudan. There's a civil war in Myanmar that's resulting in the loss of both tangible and intangible heritage during their civil war. Communities are disrupted. People are driven to displaced persons camps. We've seen that across northern Iraq with the communities we work with. The war in Ukraine continues. And on Wednesday, I think there's going to be an extremely important presentation about digitization and documentation efforts in Gaza. I'm looking forward to that myself. So what does this tell us? Well, I believe that the message is really simple. We're in an emergency situation. Cultural heritage is lost on a daily basis. It's irreplaceable, and it's up to us to act, because if we don't treat this situation as an emergency, then what exactly is an emergency? So how do we do this? Well, I believe we're at a point where we have to scale up our work, and I'm here to invite you to join us with us in partnership on that scaling up. Now, recently, the U.S. State Department convened an international visitors leadership program for cultural heritage professionals. And I'm sure that many in the audience have attended this program in the past. It involves bringing a group to the U.S. to meet with professionals, to visit sites, museums, libraries, and archives, and to see examples of digital infrastructure and other projects at U.S. institutions. We presented the Tarathi project there. Helena and I both spoke, and Abir was one of the attendees. Now, we heard from 3/4 of the attendees that they thought that the Tarathi project was something that would be enthusiastically greeted and very successful in their home countries, and that they would like to collaborate on bringing this program back home. So I want to go directly to a call to action. If you are interested in partnership, here's the call to action. If you're interested in partnership, in using the project to help with both the digitization and documentation of your collections and in building capacities using digital infrastructure tools. Hold on just 1 second here. I'm going to start this again. So here's our call, it's our call to action. If you're interested in partnership in using the Tarathi project to help with both the digitization and documentation of your collections and in building capacities for using digital infrastructure and tools to preserve and protect cultural assets and to combat looting and the loss of materials, let us know. Please reach out to us. I want to give you my email address. It's my name. It's p.herdrick@theantiquitiescoalition.org. I'm sure we can get this, all our email addresses circulated. We're interested in coordinating this, including the fundraising, because what we believe is if we don't scale up to address the threats to cultural heritage, we are not doing our jobs. So we're happy to take questions on that. It's a very simple message. We're interested in partnership. We'd like to bring this to a broader group. We think this can address the problems of looting. We think it can address cultural heritage preservation, and we hope you are interested. So please do let us know. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Peter. Would you please stay with us for the questions and answer section? And now let's start with the Q&A. If you have any question, please raise your hand, introduce yourself, and specify the speaker you're addressing. Any question? I have question, Dr. Shawan. When you were talking about the digital repository, are you talking about open source software or commercial software designed by web developer? Actually, I looked to your repository and includes many, many features.
Which one? Which one?
The one you showed.
Okay.
So it was really impressive.
Yeah, I mean, this on. So yes, so the QDL, as I said, it began way before the library had even thought about a digital repository. And in fact, I remember we were operating from a portable cabin somewhere in the education city. The library building hadn't even been built, and this is where the QDL, when the QDL started. So it was always going to be just about the British Library collection, but then later on, you know, we did attempt to disseminate some of the other collections through it, but it just didn't feel right because it was all about the British Library partnership. But so in light of that, when we finally had you know, developed a digital repository, which is there, but I mean, now it's on a data technology. Also, not much thought was given at the time. As you can imagine, this was during the early stages of the library development. You know, we were just focused on getting content in and sort of building collection. The priority wasn't to sort of build a set of expertise that we would need to sustain all these services. You know, thinking about technologically advanced products and other sort of related things. So those thoughts came much later. In fact, in the last 4 to 5 years, with change of leadership and directions and so on. So what we are doing now is to build in a way build a digital repository pretty much from scratch. And we've recently closed our tendering process to build a new digital repository with quite a bit of customization. So we really would like this to be, however, the product, the software itself is based on open source. It's likely to be DSpace, yes. But it didn't have to be DSpace. It could have been anything, as long as our main requirement was either to have an open source product or build something custom that could be made open source so that other institutions could also benefit from that. And we were very conscious in sort of, in ensuring that that's what we wanted. Because the problem with proprietary products is that you may have some of the features that you want now, but then as you know, ownership changes, leadership changes, and you might find yourselves in a bit of a vendor lock-in. Then in future, if you wanted to add more features, then you would either have to pay more, or you would be sort of stuck with what you would have. And that is the reason this time we ensure that we have a digital repository solution based on an open source product, but the requirements and the customizations are standardized where possible. So we stipulated the need for standardized metadata formats, not just one, multitude of metadata formats, standardized sort of dissemination practices, and of course, an integration with our digital preservation solution.
Also, you worked on linking data. I've noticed that data is linked.
It is.
Did you use Dublin Core or Mark 21?
So we have, in our catalog, we have Mark 21. But in what we're aiming to do in the digital repository is not to be limited by Mark 21. I mean, as much as we love Mark 21 and all the other variations of Mark, as you know, when it comes to describing complex relationships between different objects, there's limitations. And this is where mods, sort of other sort of domain-specific metadata formats are sort of, are becoming more prevalent. So we'd like to have as much flexibility as possible when describing the metadata, but also to interoperate with other sort of legacy systems. So we should be able to, provide Mark if needed. We should be able to provide Dublin Core if necessary. And the link data part that you mentioned, we have, done a bit of work in ensuring their relationships between the objects are captured, but we haven't quite implemented the true link data. So yet. So this is work that we aim to do in future. Okay.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
So there's one.
Please, تفضلي.
نعم، السؤال، شكرا أولا على المؤتمر وعلى الدعوة لجمعية المكتبات اللبنانية. السؤال بالنسبة للبوابة العراقية، قلتوا أن هناك أهداف محددة تودون تحقيقها. الهدف رقم 5 هو المساواة بين الجنسين. كيف حققتم هذه المساواة؟ وشكرا.
شكرا على السؤال. حققنا الهدف الخامس، مساواة بين الجنسين، باعتبار أنه البوابة أتاحت لكل الجنسين الدخول إلى، يعني ما حددت فقط البحث خاص بجنس محدد، أتاحت للذكور والإناث أنه المساواة بين الجنسين، الدخول إلى البوابة والاستفادة من المصادر الفكرية المتاحة فيهم.
شكرا.
تفضلي فاطمة.
Presenter from Algeria. Do we have any examples of how digitization has helped in reducing trafficking or looting? Do you have any example of this?
Mr. Peter.
I think this question is for me.
Okay.
Yeah, so right now, we receive feedback from the customs that they are using the photo guide that we gave them to actually help them identifying objects that they are at high risk of illicit trafficking. But honestly speaking, we haven't received like a case to demonstrate how they actually used Turathi database or the photo guide to actually stop an ongoing operation yet.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
My question is directed to Peter. Hi. In what ways and dimensions are you willing to help?
Well, specifically, I can say this is we've worked on the Turathi project for a couple of years now. We've had it so in a place where we think it's very successful. The combination, I think this is, in many ways, it's about community, and in many ways, it's also about the idea of working with multiple stakeholders. Now, you noticed in the photographs that we had that you saw lots of people who were from the gendarmerie, from the military, and from the police, who are working together with us on the questions of cultural heritage preservation. Obviously, this is a strong coalition to be working with, and one that reminds us that cultural heritage is important to everyone. So one of the things that we think is important is to bring these ideas, to make these ideas more both make government partners more aware of it, but also make the public more aware of it, to try to address questions of threats to cultural heritage. You saw we always do big media presentations when we do announce our projects and announce our goals, that our goals have been met. We think that's important. We have to let local folks know that what we've accomplished and how it can address issues that they care about. And I am sure you know as well as I know that there is a public interest in cultural heritage preservation. Everyone believes that their own cultural heritage, the heritage of their country, the heritage of their communities, is important and that has to be protected. So we're also helping to deliver that message as well, that this is an important subject. It's an important subject globally, and that we can do something about this. So we're happy to try to build on that. But also what we're willing to do is we're from the United States, so we don't get government support for the work that we do. As a consequence, we are practiced fundraisers. So we are willing to do that as well. We're willing to work with local partners on raising money internationally or raising money locally, and using that money to address and to build projects that are important to you. Now, I make that point too, because one of the things that we do in our projects at the Antiquities Coalition is we believe in something that I think is defining for us, which is that we do this in a spirit of service. Our expertise is in building digital infrastructure projects, it's in fundraising, and it's in administration. We do not pretend to be experts on local culture. Now, obviously, Abir is from Algeria, and she is an expert. She is our key person in our work in Algeria. But if we were to come to any other country, we would what we always do is we always put our local partners in charge of all decisions that address cultural issues. So we're not going to go to any country. We're not going to go to Jordan and tell Jordanians about what's important for Jordan to be preserving and protecting and promoting as their cultural heritage. What we can do is we can help raise money. We can help to implement projects. We can do that in an effective way that has good outcomes. We have the track record to do that. But what we don't do is we don't tell people about their local culture. Now, you may have noticed that over the course of time, you may have come you may have been involved in international cooperation where the international cooperation seemed a little one way, or where experts from outside the country wanted to come in and tell you what to do. We believe the opposite of that. That is not our expertise. The expertise belongs in the local community. It's important for the local community to assert that role as leadership in those issues. So all those things are things we try to address. In addition to this, we have done, in using Algeria as an example, we've done conferences on that. We're looking to the future. What we're hoping to address is the climate crisis, particularly for Abir mentioned that there are many, many private collections of manuscripts, particularly through the desert manuscripts in southern Algeria. Many of those are under threat. Because of the rising temperatures, as temperatures go up, and I don't need to tell anybody there that climate change is real. As temperatures go up, manuscripts are under threat, and so that's an issue that we would like to address. Those may be issues in your country too. There's there's ways we can take this to address these, to address the project specifically to your country, to your challenges, and we are happy to follow your lead on that question. I see Abir has her hand up, and I'd like to turn it over to her.
Thank you so much, Peter. Yeah, that was so important point that you brought. I'm sorry, I just wanted to go back to the question that we received before you start talking about the international cooperation. So when the lady, she asked me about a showcase of when we actually use the photo guide or the Turati database, and for the law enforcement to stop an ongoing operation or something like that, we have it, but because of the large coverage that Turati Lounge received and the promoting we did on all kind of platforms, the Bardo Museum actually received an email from a lady from the United States that she possesses an item that was given to her back in the 50s when Algeria was still under the French occupation from a French guy here in Algeria, and she believed that it belongs to Algeria. She sent several photos, and it turned out to be that it's an Algerian, actually, cultural goods. So right now, the Ministry of Culture, they started the procedures to follow up the repatriation of this item, and it's because of the media coverage that Turati got. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other question? Okay. تفضل Dr. Maud.
My question is to Dr. Sharon. Maybe you said in your presentation you had already the answers to my question, and I didn't get them. When you identify an object at the British Library, for instance, which is a material object, do you do yourself the digitization, or is it the British Library which does it first? And then, in the case you do the digitization, who is the owner of the digital copy? Who decided how to use it, etc.?
Sorry. So that's a very good question. Thank you. So in case of the British Library Partnership, the digitization is done by a dedicated team at the British Library. And this team was formed as part of the British Library, Qatar National Library, Qatar Foundation Partnership. So there is a Qatar Foundation Partnership office somewhere up in London. And this team is specifically hired to work on this particular partnership. There's digitization experts there, cataloging experts there. They're all specifically hired to work on this partnership. So the answer to the first question, digitization is happening in BL, but the quality assurance of the digitized content is a collaborative effort. So they do digitization according to the quality specification that we have, and then we have our digitization department. Those of you who are not aware, so we have a IFLA conservation center supported by a digitization center as well. So we have a lot of expertise, especially for Arabic content. So we do a second level of quality assurance in QNL. So when the La content comes in, we do another level of level of quality assurance, and the content that passes these both levels of quality assurance is accepted for digital preservation and dissemination. So that's the first part, the answer to your first part of the question. The second part, the ownership, it's a little complicated. So as far as the content that's accepted for publication and everything, there's a license that's assigned to it. And in most cases, it's an open source license. So the digital copies that we get, we have the right to disseminate with the license that was agreed, as well as anything we need to do for long-term digital preservation. So we can make out as many copies as we want. We can use it internally as we see fit. But in terms of external usage, the user has to adhere to the license that was assigned. And in most cases, it's an open source, whether it's a Creative Commons, there's an open government license. But there is a handful of items that have license set as unknown, because we either couldn't contact the original owner of of the artifact, or it just wasn't, it wasn't conclusive enough. And in such a case, even though we have the high resolution image and we can use it for internal purposes such as exhibitions and other things, and we definitely can preserve it, but if there's a request from a patron to access that particular image, then we ask them to contact British Library. So they can continue to use the online version, but if they want the higher resolution for instance, for commercial purposes, for example, that is something we cannot give permission ourselves. This is something they have to get back to the British Library for and negotiate as they see fit. But for most of the content, we have open access, non-commercial uses in most cases. If somebody comes to us and says, we'd like to use this set of images, even though they're Creative Commons non-commercial, but they would like to use it for commercial purposes, this is where we do sort of case-by-case analysis. We do have a department which particularly focuses on intellectual property and copyright, who deals with this kind of queries.
Excuse me, one more question. And what are the rights of the British Library on your digital copy?
Can you hear me? Okay. So they do have quite a bit of rights, so they can continue to take credit for the digitization effort, because this was meant to be I'm sorry. This should make it better. So they can take the credit for the digitization effort they've done, because this is a partnership. It's not something a vendor-client relationship. This is meant to be a mutually beneficial partnership. They also have the rights over the metadata that they've created as part of the digitization process, and as far as the high resolution images are concerned, they have copies too, so they can continue to use it as they see fit. We continue to use the ones we have, as long as the licensing that we've agreed on is adhered to. That's fine. Both parties can continue to use as they see fit. The problems arise when there is the licensing is unknown, and this is where they need to do a bit of an extra work. Hope that answers the question. You're welcome. Can I ask a question? Sorry. This is a question. So I'll keep it very brief. This is a question for Peter and his team. So thanks for the presentation. It's really great. The first one is a bit of a curiosity. I know I've seen Qatar National Library mentioned in a couple of slides, and I think you mentioned that you collaborate with the National Library, perhaps in the context of DLME. So were those slides taken from the DLME websites, or is it something that we've collaborated more actively with you?
That was from the DLME website.
So answer is DLME. So you got those slides from DLME. Okay, great. The second question also is a bit of a technical nature. Is the so it's really interesting to see that how the portal that you've demonstrated. This is mainly for Abir. That how one could report a potentially illegally acquired content, and sort of other sort of related sort of aspects of that. Is that narrative captured somehow as part of the metadata and also shared with sort of wider audience? So I could see the benefit of that being shared in a more structured way, because one of the themes of this conference is artificial intelligence. So imagine if that information is shared in a way that could be in a machine readable way, then you could potentially use AI to make some intelligent conclusions from that content.
Well, Turathi is an open source for public, but we made sure to respect the striking balance between the sensitivity of the information and the statistics shared from the law enforcement agencies in Algeria and what the public should know. So I completely understand your concept.
I'll add something as well, which is that I'm an archaeologist. As Peter said, our background is in cultural heritage, but we collaborated very closely with law enforcement. We saw this first as a tool for them. And actually, initially, we really wanted to make this completely online. But the feedback that we received from law enforcement was that, they aren't able always to look at tools on their phone or to get online on a computer. So that's why we went and to have a hard copy. But our goals were the same. and that we felt it should still be made available to the public as well to have that information. And we have hopes to continue to build on that, potentially with an app or with some of this other technology that you're mentioning, because it, as Abir said, we do still want to continue to strike that balance, but law enforcement still on paper, so.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, the final one. Apologies. This is for Peter. So the partnership aspect of that, I'm just a little curious because I think the work you're doing is great, and I think it's especially the awareness raising part of that. And as I meant, the reason I ask is I don't know how to put this politically correct way. That when you have a partnership, it needs to have some kind of mutual benefits. So I can understand, you're working with the Algerian folks to do this really wonderful and important work. But how does it benefit your organization? And what does that mean for the other partnerships that could potentially kind of, evolve from there?
Well, thanks for the question, and it's an important one. We're mission driven. We're driven by our mission. What we want to see is we want to see cultural heritage preserved and protected. And so that is the benefit that we receive. We work, we believe that there's lots of ways to do this, of course, right? We work on policy, we work on scholarship, and we work on the ground. All those are ways that we can, are proven ways that we know can advance the ideas of cultural heritage preservation. And that is really what our mission goal is. So that's how we receive that benefit, is we believe that by building these infrastructural projects, that it helps in the local community, it creates capacity, it builds out jobs, and one of our expertise is to, as we say, do outreach and make the public aware of what it is we do, which is also very important. So that's the if you will, that's the payback to us, and we think that these projects are very important. I'll cite some of the work we did in northern Iraq. We work in Kurdistan with religious minority groups, and if you take as an example, we've done intangible cultural heritage video documentation with the Yazidi community. Now, the Yazidi community is a very interesting community for lots of reasons. Unfortunately, they were the subjects of genocidal attacks in 2014. They really understand why something like video documentation of intangible cultural heritage is extremely important. Their heritage was under threat in an existential way. So their community is also basically the transmission of culture is done orally. So there's not a lot of documentary heritage from the community, and there's not old material. Much of their religion, in fact, much of the religion of Yazidism is passed along through oral tradition, through oral teachings. So to document that is incredibly important. It's incredibly important because, as they say, their community is under threat still. In many ways, their community population is going down, and when you lose population, of course, you lose culture along with that. So we believe that something like intangible cultural heritage video documentation in this case is extremely important. We did a 45-part series. It's on YouTube if you happen to want to look it up, or if anybody else is interested in intangible cultural heritage. It's a fine example, I think, of the kind of work we do. And it's things like cooking and dance and religious ceremonies and ceremonies around holidays, that sort of thing. You'll see it there. But I think the point for us then is that we understand that that our mission goal, which is to preserve and protect cultural heritage, is being met by all these, and that's what's in it for us.
Thank you all. The time of this session is over. I want to thank all our speakers and all of you for joining us today. Thank you. Have a nice day.